Iranian regime has effectively been at war with the United States since 1979.
And this would be so dangerous, not just to the West, or even just to Israel, but to the entire world. Saudi Arabia will not sit on the sidelines and allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon without having a weapon in kind. We buried their nuclear material underneath the mountain. They decimated the program. But it doesn't mean that if Iran still has the willingness to develop, they couldn't get shovels and a tractor and dig this stuff out. So it was a major, major setback, but it didn't eliminate it completely. Iran has about 5 months of leverage. It's pretty small leverage. And then that leverage goes away. The strongest military force in Lebanon cannot be Hezbollah controlled by Iran. As long as that happens, there can't be peace in this part of the world. And the reality is that strategy didn't work very well.
The war with Iran is in its 4th month. The Strait of Hormuz is disrupted and energy prices are up worldwide. And Congress has just voted on whether the war should continue. Our guest is one of the members of the center, or at the center of that debate. Congressman Michael Baumgartner is a Republican from Washington State. He sits on the House Foreign Affairs Committee and its Middle East Subcommittee. Before Congress, he served at the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad and in Afghanistan, and he first came to the region as a student in Syria and Jordan 30 years ago. Congressman, welcome to The Diplomat. Before we get to the hard stuff and hard topics and the war with Iran, I want to start with your own story. You were 30 years ago a student in Syria and Amman, right? And then you met your wife on a counter-narcotics team in Helmand, right?
Yeah.
So when the young man who studied in the region looks back at it today as a congressman, what do you see in the region?
Well, a lot has changed for the better, and also a lot has stayed the same. But I was very fortunate in 1994. That time I was in high school, and I was one of 10 American students who was sent to the Middle East for the summer on a Malcolm Kerr scholarship from the National Council of U.S. Arab Relations. I think, as many of your viewers will know, Malcolm Kerr was the dean of American University in Beirut, who was tragically assassinated, and there was a scholarship in his honor to try to build better understanding between Americans and the Middle East, because a lot of times Americans have a kind of very high-level stereotypical view of the Middle East, and getting to see firsthand, you understand some of the complexities, some of the diversity. I remember going to Christian churches in Syria, for example, and saying, oh, they have Christians. When I was in high school, oh, they have Christians here too, and these things. So it was a wonderful experience, and I never, if you'd have told me 30 years ago that one day I'd be a member of Congress serving on the Middle East Subcommittee on House Foreign Affairs, I would say I wouldn't have believed it. But it was a good start to the journey. And then, as you mentioned, after I was in Iraq with the U.S. State Department during the Iraq surge, I went to Afghanistan and was living and working off base with a team of Afghans, and met my wonderful wife Eleanor there, who was from England, and we fell in love and have 5 kids. So for me, the Middle East is a love story as well too. But we still have very strong feelings, and really want to see things for the better there. So, and I guess the final thing I would say, since you mentioned 1994. Back when I was in high school, we actually came here to Washington, D.C. to Georgetown University for about 10 days before going on that trip, and had a lot of good briefings. And there was a very experienced old man who was giving us, a professor who was leading the briefings. And the final thing he said to us before we went, he said, above all, remember, in the Middle East, there will always be 2 oils. The first is petroleum. The second is turmoil. And so there still are the 2 oils in the Middle East, the oil and the turmoil.
So we're going to focus a bit on the oil, but let's start with the turmoil and the Iran war, which the strikes on Iran, in your own words, you said, and you called it necessary and important. And you have said the Iranian regime has effectively been at war with the United States since 1979. 4 months in, with the supreme leader dead, his son right now is in its place, and the Strait of Hormuz is disrupted. What does the end of the war actually look like, you think?
Well, that's to be determined. We don't know if there is an Anwar Sadat type figure in Iran. We haven't seen him yet, someone who could do the difficult things to make peace. And of course, if you think about the process of 1973 up to 1979 and still ongoing, the peace process between Egypt and Israel, took a long time and still continues to develop, and may not be all the way fully in the hearts of everyone in Egypt, in Israel, but still it's a much better situation than it was when Israel and Egypt were in a perpetual state of war. And so could something like that develop? But the key thing is that in Iran, which is not the entire Iranian people, I think most of the Persian people are actually quite compatible with the West, quite compatible with modernity, and have quite fond feelings. But really, the 15 to 20% that are really hardliners, IRCG or Shia extremists, should we say? Not all Shias, but this view, they can't have a nuclear weapon. This would be so dangerous, not just to the West, or even just to Israel, but to the entire world, because these guys have been supporting terrorism, fostering terrorist attacks, chanting death to America, as we say, for nearly 50 years. But even that, they've actually acted on this. How did they as you know, the bombings in Beirut, the bombings in Khobar Towers. When I was in Iraq, some of the most deadly forces that we faced were Iranian-backed Shia militia groups, Jaish al-Mahdi and some of these groups. So, they really have a lot of American blood on their hands. So it would be so dangerous if they had a nuclear weapon, not just because of their messianic view of the way they view the world. I mean, they believe that the hand of God is going to come and sweep them across the Middle East and across the world, but also because what it would do for nuclear proliferation. Saudi Arabia will not sit on the sidelines and allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon without having a weapon in kind. In fact, they could very likely get one, in a very short order from the Pakistanis. Similarly, if you look at Turkey with Erdogan's view of Turkey's proper role in the world, are they going to allow Iran and Saudi Arabia to have a nuclear weapon and not have Turkey have a nuclear weapon? Then you look at the United Arab Emirates, Egypt. Suddenly, in the most volatile region in the world, many people have nuclear weapons, and that's dangerous. So we have to take the opportunity to make sure that doesn't happen. So we are in a much better place than we were a year ago. And in all of this discussion, remember what was North Korea's strategy to get a nuclear weapon? They had so many ballistic missiles in the 90s on the South Korean frontier that when Bill Clinton looked at taking military action versus the North Koreans, he said it would be too bloody because Seoul was so close to North Korea, so many ballistic missiles. So you've heard Secretary Rubio talk about the ballistic missile shield that Iran was developing. And if that shield got so strong with the ballistic missiles and their terrorist proxy forces in Iraq, Syria, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, and the Houthis, it would be so bloody, and essentially you would miss the opportunity to keep them from having a nuclear weapon. And in North Korea, it's a big problem, but North Korea doesn't have a jihadist messianic view of itself. It's largely a hermit kingdom. So you think about the situation in North Korea, then you apply it to Iran with a group of guys that want to go out and conquer the world by jihad. It's too dangerous. So it really is fortunate that President Trump had the strength to do what he did in the past year.
Because the regime is a bit different from what the majority of Iranian people think.
Look,
right?
nobody...
and themselves, they demonstrated and manifested against.
Yes, and that speaks to the evil of the regime, that somewhere between 20,000, maybe 40,000 people were killed just in January. All these people that we're talking about this, say President Trump do something in January, Many of these same people are now criticizing the president. But look at America. Look at the Persian community in America. Look at the Persian community, the Iranian community throughout the Middle East. They are very combative. They're good business people. They like good social life. They're fine with their neighbors. It really is this unfortunate situation, the small business. This is the buzzer for our voting. So this says, hey, the floor of Congress is going to open up, and however bad you think it is right now, sometimes I have to sleep in the office when we're voting in the middle of the night and you hear this thing, but it'll go away in just a second.
Well, this is good to witness, I think, and now we know that it's happening. So it happens 3 times, like it rings 3 times?
Yeah, the floor will open at 10 o'clock for another vote sequence and some of the buzzers and lights. Actually, I keep meaning to have my staff try to disable this thing, but it's centrally located, so we'll see how it goes when it goes
Maybe
next.
that was the cue to understand also to our viewers. Then what did it mean last year when we hit Iran, when the United States hit Iran, and we said, and the United States said that the nuclear weapons and program was demolished? What was the necessary thing about this year? What was the gap? Where's the gap? How can we explain it?
Yeah, obviously, Iran has a very complex nuclear program. And let's be clear, Iran, when you make a nuclear weapon, the first phase is the most difficult phase, to make a little bit of processed uranium. And you have to, with very delicate balance, you have to spin centrifuges. So to go from a little bit of uranium enrichment to, like, say, 0 to 5%, and then to 20%, that is very difficult. But then to go for 20% to 60% is slightly easier, and the final stage of the nuclear weapon is actually quite straightforward. And the 5% is what you need if you want to make nuclear energy. The 20%, really the only use for it is if you want to get to 6%. Some you can use for isotopes, for medical research and these sort of things. But that's not what Iran was doing. But they'd already done the difficult part. So Operation Midnight Hammer, which took place in the summer of last year, 2025, the good thing that happened there is, with these massive bombs, the closest that we can get to a nuclear weapon without being a nuclear weapon, we buried their nuclear material underneath the mountain. Okay, so it's much more difficult for them to access, and hopefully we destroyed their centrifuges, but the material is still there. It's underneath a mountain. So when the president was saying we decimated, it's true they decimated the program, but it doesn't mean that if Iran still has the willingness to develop, they couldn't get shovels and a tractor and dig this stuff out. So it was a major, major setback, but it didn't eliminate it completely.
Okay. You just came back from Shangri-La in Singapore, right?
Yes.
Where the conversation was about the Hormuz disruption and what it is doing to Asian economies. Oil that passes through Hormuz mostly goes east to China, India, Japan. Is the cost of this war being paid more by America's adversaries or by its partners, you think?
More by its adversaries, certainly. And actually, I was surprised at Shangri-La, the Shangri-La Defense Conference. I thought I would hear more about the negative impact of the disruption of oil flows, but it was less than I expected. You know, more oil has been brought to market. Actually, a lot of American oil has now been brought to America. America is now the number 1 producer of oil and gas. The Straits of Hormuz are actually a tremendous strategic weakness for Iran. I mean, most of Iran's oil, almost all of it, is on the other sides of the Hormuz. It's very straightforward for America. Really, any country now that has drones and a willingness to lay mines can exploit the strategic weakness. Now, it's also a weakness for Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar. UAE less, because UAE is building a pipeline. Saudi Arabia less, because Saudi Arabia is building a pipeline. But they talk about it. It's some huge strategic weakness for the U.S. It's really not. It's much more significant for China, India, Pakistan, in the Middle East. And these are some countries that have leverage over Iran. The only leverage Iran really has is the American political cycle, in the psychology of Americans, and how the economy is doing up until November. So Iran has about 5 months of leverage. It's pretty small leverage. And then that leverage goes away in December, because at that point, President Trump is not running for re-election, and so they would be better off to take a good deal now, because I think they may find they might like even less what happens in December.
To talk about the ideological question, you have raised concerns about sleeper cells and radicalizations inside the United States. Our viewers are largely Muslim, and many of them hear that language and wonder whether it describes an ideology or whether it describes them. You studied in Damascus and Amman, as we mentioned earlier, and you know the difference from the inside. Can we draw the line for us? What exactly is the threat and what it is not?
Well, I mean, you see in the complexity and diversity of the Middle East, that there's no one type of person there. And, I spent some time working in the United Arab Emirates, which of course is a country and a people very compatible with modernity and diversity of cultures in the West, and very committed against Islamic radicalization. And so, here in the U.S., look, we're a big melting pot culture. There are a significant number of Muslims who've come to the country and integrated in successful fashion. And obviously, the type of people that did the terrorist attack of 9/11 or who are not compatible with the West is a smaller proportion. It's a very concerning proportion of it, but we need to make sure that it doesn't color the view of everyone. And I think as you're seeing, like with every culture, that in the melting pot of America, as long as people come here and accept the values of America, and the tolerance and the diversity and the roots of what America is, that they can be successful. And I think you're seeing many folks. I have many people of different cultures and ethnic backgrounds come through our office and are great Americans, and we celebrate that.
The administration's new counterterrorism strategy and the debate around it put the ideology back at the center of the conversation. Many Arab governments have fought the same ideology battle for decades and an enormous cost. And some argue Washington listens to them on this only selectively. What can the United States actually learn from the region on this rather than the other way around, you think?
Well, I think we need to deal in realities and not in stereotypes, but also what you can see from the region is that there still are significant challenges in the region of those who want to embrace a modern pluralistic future for the world, and those that do not. And this is ultimately a struggle for the Muslim people and for people of the Middle East to be the lead on. It's their country and culture that they have to determine. But you have a variety of views. Again, this is why the project in the United Arab Emirates is so important, to see that there is a future that's compatible with modernity while still not losing the historical cultural ties. And then the other side, the complexity and challenges of Lebanon. You can see how it mixes together, but there are many years where folks live together. I obviously spent some pretty significant time in Baghdad and in Iraq, and the period before I was there, what we were really trying to do there was stop an ethno-sectarian war on that line between Sunnis and Shias. So it was really an intercultural Middle East fight and struggle in the period after Saddam. So this is an ongoing thing. We shouldn't be naive about the struggles, and we need to make sure that when people come to America, that they truly want to embrace what America is or what the West is, and they can integrate, because the American project, to this sense, I think is much more realistic and successful than it has been in some parts of Europe, where you get large communities or communities in the Middle East that go to Europe, but either don't want to integrate or they don't have the opportunity to integrate in a way, and so they have small fiefdoms or ghettos and these sorts of things, and so that's not good for us either. But this is not something that I think you have to be realistic about the time frame. 30 years from now, the next congressperson who's sitting here, the next Michael Baumgartner, will likely see some of these things, but hopefully some improvement. It is very significant that the Abraham Accords are very significant, because the question of what is the role of the Jewish people in the Middle East, can they be accepted? And those Arab governments that accepted the Abraham Accords are essentially saying that Jewish people have a right and are accepted in the Middle East.
They were
as well.
accepted. They lived for centuries in Lebanon, in Syria, and even Baghdad, under those regimes, and even in Iran, they do exist.
True, but more than just the Jewish people, that the state of Israel exists, and that's really the significance of the Abraham Accords. And again, think back to that situation of Egypt and Israel since the late 40s up into the 70s, and even today. There was some bloody fighting and wars with Egypt and Israel. It took someone like Sadat and others to say, this isn't good it's not in our interest. It was not in Egypt's interest. If our people want a better life, we have to figure out a way to come to peace and agreement with this.
You mentioned civil wars. There are some concerning reports about Lebanon and the fear of division between opinions of Lebanese on whether what's happening. From your seat, do you think there is a fear of a civil war in Lebanon because of what's happening now?
I think that Lebanon has shown there's always a fear of a civil war in Lebanon, unfortunately. But and for such a wonderful country, which, everyone loves Lebanon. I think so many people have understand it's such a vibrant, interesting place, and really one of the most fun and beautiful places with maybe more opportunity than anywhere else in the Middle East, and everyone else is frustrated about what the situation is there. And I think ultimately, obviously it's up to the Lebanese people. There's an opportunity now, we hope, that Hezbollah can be pushed down in such a way that the Shias in Lebanon can see their legitimate government process, rather than a terrorist militia group supported by Iran, is the way to express their political opinions and their future. And so as long as Iran, not the Iranian people, but as long as Iran and through the extremists have a long hand into Syria, it would be very difficult for Lebanon to have a better future. And so that's the opportunity. It's the best opportunity in a while. Can the Lebanese military be built up into a way that can actually function, and can Lebanese express their political opinion? And look how successful the Lebanese have been outside of Lebanon, almost in every continent on the earth, as traders and things. People know Lebanese have done so well. So they have it in their capability. The question is, can they do it within Lebanon?
Is it true that Congress or any military aid right now going to LAF or Lebanese Armed Forces is going to be way less than it was before? It was like more than 200 million, and now it's like way less, like 30 or 20. What is the number? Is this true? What do you have an idea about this?
I think there's a bipartisan consensus and a consensus with the administration that it's, and all of the West, that in the Gulf, that it's important right now to take this opportunity to try to build up the legitimate Lebanese armed forces so that they can have a chance. And it cannot be the strongest military force in Lebanon cannot be Hezbollah controlled by Iran. As long as that happens, there can't be peace in this part of the world.
Last question, Congressman. 30 years ago, you went to the region as a student because something about it drew you in. Today, you help write American policy toward that region, toward these countries. For our audience across the Arab world, what is one thing you would want them to know about how this Congress sees them, not their governments, them?
Well, I think they would want the Congress to know that there's a lot of members of Congress, and I don't know the exact number, but there's a lot of members of Congress that fought or served in the Middle East. And they did it not so that America could conquer the Middle East, not so that America could steal the oil. They really did it to try to give the people of the Middle East really a chance at a better future and a freedom. So I think America's efforts in the Middle East were very noble. I know, look, there's a lot of conspiracy theories in the Middle East. A lot of people obsess about America's role, but I look at my colleagues here that spent time in the Middle East, that had friends die and these things, and I look at what we were actually trying to do there. And of course, we thought it was in the American interest. We weren't there out of charity, but it also was, we didn't come as conquerors, and we largely have left. And so I think I look at it as America's experience as a very noble and valiant effort, and we still want a better future for the Middle East. Now, the Middle East is now less important for America than it used to be because of our own oil and gas production. We talk about the oil and the turmoil. At the start, the oil factor is slightly reduced. It still matters to the globe, but it really is the turmoil factor. And we want the best for everyone out there. I think also if you look back at America's project in the Middle East over the last 25 years, after the terrorist attack of 9/11, the big idea was that we needed to try to foster democracy in the Middle East as a way to drain the intensity of Islamic extremism. That through democracy, people would feel like they had a better voice in their government, and that would be. And the reality is that strategy didn't work very well. It was too difficult. Places like when we pressed for elections amongst the Palestinians, it gave an Islamist militant government, and so. Now we're looking more at the realism of just really what is possible and saying democracy has to be on the timeline of the people of the Middle East. America cannot drive that process. And so we're looking at more of this interest. But there's a lot of members of Congress that served there. We all had different views there, but I think all of us shared the idea that we were trying to give the people of the Middle East a better life.
Congressman, thank you for sitting down with us.
Anytime. It's nice to have you.
Thank you. That was Congressman Michael Baumgartner of the House Foreign Affairs Committee on the war with Iran, the role of Congress, and how Washington's majority sees the region. And we will keep watching. Thank you for listening, and please follow us. This was The Diplomat.